Hello, my fellow adventurers in agility. This video is quite literally dedicated to my spouse. Baby, I love you. Your campaign is a lot more interesting than mine, but you haven't run it in a while, and I miss playing it. You told me you're overwhelmed by the number of factions and threads you've introduced, and you're afraid of the story becoming inconsistent in the end. You also said you have specific moments or scenes in the campaign that you want to reach, but you don't know how to get there since you have no idea what we, your players, would do. Now, being a great partner, I know you always watch my videos. You've seen my stuff about story mapping and backward planning, but you said you can't quite implement them in a workflow. So I'll try to demonstrate that workflow to you now. For the rest of you folks watching, this is not a video about coming up with inspiration or ideas to run in your campaign. But assuming you already have some ideas and you just don't know how to get your players there, maybe this process or workflow will help you be more confident. But before I talk about the process, I should first tell you about the principles behind it. I have two key principles. First, anything that hasn't been presented to the players yet can be changed, so don't be too attached to what you've already planned. Second, it's not railroading to create the backstory for your scenarios. As a DM, you have full freedom to specify all of the background information for any scenario you present to the players. As long as you haven't given the players a chance to influence something, it's not railroading to just say it happens. When you use both of these principles together, it means you have the freedom to present your players with any scenario you want because you can make it make sense regardless of what they've done before. Now, that sounds awfully like railroading, but it's not, as I hope I can demonstrate later. So here's the actual workflow. You start by defining your factions. This is about managing multiple factions after all. To make these factions meaningful, they need to have goals. Write those down as epics in the user story format. If you don't know what epics or user stories are, watch my first video to get a more in-depth discussion. For right now, we just know that an epic is a large, overarching objective that can be broken down into smaller steps. These smaller steps are the user stories. Next, you define your milestone scenes. These are the things that get you really excited, like a huge battle or a big reveal. Identify which factions should be involved and then plan it backwards to see how your party can potentially get there. I also have a video about backward planning if you're interested. That's your initial campaign setup. If you're not starting from scratch, don't worry. Do the exact same thing for your existing factions. And be mindful of the milestone scenes you've got in the works. Everything that has happened in your campaign so far becomes your campaign lore document. Now we go to the iterative process of running your games. First step is to select which faction you want to develop. And once you've done that, create the next step user story for that faction's epic. Say your epic is something like, as the Zentarim, we want to build the Omega weapon so that we can hold the world hostage and become its rulers. Your first user story could be, as the Zentarim, we want to capture an esteemed inventor so that we can force them to design the Omega weapon. The user story will be the basis for your game session. You use all of the information you have about your campaign. At this point, it will likely be just your campaign lore document. And you identify any of the big picture details that lead to your milestone scenes that you want to share during gameplay. Then you run your game. Collect the outcomes and use it as input for the next user story you will create. When you've done enough arcs and you've sprinkled in enough information foreshadowing your milestone, you can choose to run it. When you do, you just have to take some extra time to update the scene so that all of the potential plot inconsistencies have been covered. I have a note here saying to limit the number of faction epics you choose to run at the same time. This is because you may want to develop multiple faction epics in parallel during gameplay. Try not to do too many all at once because that puts a lot of cognitive load on you as the DM. Remember the two key principles. Whatever you don't play, you can define as backstory, which means you don't have to think of it until you need it. This will get clearer when you see the example. I hope. So I played a short campaign with ChatGPT. I asked it to tell me what happened after I described a scenario to it, so it kinda represented my players. The only preparation I did to begin with is what you see here. I defined the party, which is composed of Matt the Mercenary, Mulligan Blee, Cat Moleville, and Ang Briar. I also chose to play with 5 different factions: the Harpers, the Zentarim, the Lord's Alliance, Cat's Parents, and the Voices, which is a criminal underground organization that Matt used to be affiliated with. As you can see, I don't know anything about anyone yet, and I don't even know what the campaign will be about. I tried to do it live, but that was a bad idea. I'll just walk you through what happened instead. I first described my party to ChatGPT and asked it to come up with the campaign theme as well as the objectives of each of the factions. This is just to demonstrate that the technique stands on its own and that I could not have possibly planned everything out right from the start. It said the story will be about a mysterious artifact tied to the rise of a tyrant, and the different factions would race to control it. In terms of motivations for the factions, it came up with the following on screen, which I chose to summarize or modify slightly differently. Kicking things off with the Harpers. The Harpers want to protect the artifact so that they can maintain the balance of power in the Sword Coast. The Zentarim want to acquire the artifact so that they can bend the Sword Coast to their will. The Lord's Alliance want to safeguard the artifact so that the noble elite can maintain their rule. Kat's parents are apparently Netherese nobles, and they want to make Kat use the artifact so that she can restore the prestige of her family. And lastly, the Voices want to retrieve the artifact so that they can regain control of the criminal underworld. So it seems they used to be much more powerful, but fell, and now need some more firepower to regain their status. With this collection of epics, we can see some nice relationships emerge. All of the factions except for one would like to possess the artifact. The Harpers want nobody to have the artifact. Its power should not be used. Now, truth be told, I heavily changed the motivation of Kat's parents, but that's perfectly within my rights as the DM. I thought that with them being nobles too, it opens up more avenues for alliances and betrayals down the line. With this setup, I thought about driving my campaign towards the scene of the party defending the artifact while a ritual is being conducted, and the other factions are trying to take it and prevent them from succeeding. I'm kind of tired of scenarios where it's the protagonists who are desperately trying to catch up to a villain to stop their plans. This time, I want them to be desperately fending off their enemies instead. So how do I get my players from the start of the campaign up to this point? That's where backward planning comes in. So remember how I told you that I tried to record this video live and it was a disaster? Here's a glimpse of that. I'm showing this to you because I talked through my thought process when coming up with this backward plan you see here. And I can't really replicate it authentically when I script it, but it's cringe AF. I mean, even more cringe than what I normally do. Check it out. So once we have this, now let's try to figure out how we can get to the ultimate scene where the party is defending the artifact. So, what does that look like? So here, let's make this gray. Let's say the ultimate scene is party is defending artifact until ritual completion. What would have happened before that? Well, I think they needed to they need to select a faction to work with because they don't know anything about the artifact anyway. So it would be the factions that would actually expose them to the artifact. So the party selects a faction to work with. If the party is able to select a faction to work with, then surely there should have been an introduction. So the factions introduce themselves to the party. Um, okay. If the factions have introduced themselves to the party, how did they acquire the artifact? So perhaps there will be a hook. So this is not totally backward planning for now. I would just go now with a hook. Uh, I think after the hook, let's say the party acquires the artifact. So the party acquires the artifact after the hook. Then the factions introduce themselves to the party in various ways because they already have the artifact and they have become people of interest. Uh, okay, then the party can select. I think this would be for now a good enough backward plan. Riveting. Now we have our backward plan. ChatGPT actually said that the campaign starts with the party already in possession of the artifact, so I had to correct it. Let's walk through the iterative process. I decided to first play with the Harpers. I came up with a user story for the quest. As the Harpers, I want to ask the party to infiltrate an underground auction so that they can acquire information about the location of the artifact. When quote unquote setting up the board, I came up with the following backstory. I thought the Harpers would have heard that there's information about a dangerous artifact up for grabs at an underground auction, but their agents can never go there. Whenever they try, the auction gets cancelled and moved to a different location. They now come to the party to ask them to infiltrate the auction instead. I also thought I would like to have Kat's mother be there so that I can introduce another faction. I then asked ChatGPT to simulate what happens. The party was able to infiltrate the auction successfully. They spoke to Kat's mother, Lady Seraphina, and she explained to Kat that she's actually a Netherese noble, and she intends to use the artifact to restore their family's status. The bidding war happens, and the party's funds are quickly dwarfed by the other bidders. Before the auction could conclude, a group of Zentarim agents raids the auction. The party teams up with Lady Seraphina and her bodyguard to prevent the Zents from getting the documents with the artifact's location. Lady Seraphina tries to take the document but fails. It ends up in the hands of Matt and Mulligan. The outcomes I noted down are: the party obtained the artifact's location through the documents. They sided with the Harpers rather than Kat's mother. Lady Seraphina helped them against the Zentarim and let them go without a fight afterwards. And lastly, the party now knows that Kat is a Netherese noble. Let's go back to step 1. I thought I wanted to play with the Zentarim this time. Looking at our backward plan, the hook is done, so we now have to work on the party getting the artifact. Given this, I came up with a couple of user stories, one for the Zents and one for the Harpers. Let's start with the Harpers. The Harpers want to ask the party to investigate the artifact's location so that they can find out if there are other people snooping around. How do I set the board up for this to be a reasonable thing? Well, why don't the Harpers do it themselves? Why will they ask a third-party group of adventurers to do this job? I determined that the Harper agent is very honorable. They don't want anyone to be able to use the artifact, even themselves. If they know the artifact's location, someone might be tempted to go after it. It's also a matter of minimizing risk. The more people who know about the artifact and its location, the higher the risk of it being discovered. The Harpers would rather the artifact be lost forever. And since the party already knows the location and seem to have honored their commitments for the most part, the Harpers are trusting them with this mission. At the same time, the Zentarim are moving. I want them to send a squad to the artifact's location. They will pose as a group of bumbling archaeology academics. The user story is, as the Zentarim Archaeology Squad, we want to explore the artifact's location so that we can obtain it. How do we make this make sense? How did the Zentarim know where to go when they failed to get the documents from the auction? Since the auction was a shady deal, then shouldn't the auctioneer also be a shady individual? That's believable. So the auctioneer actually also read the documents and knows where the artifact is. The Zentarim tracked them down and tortured them for it. I told ChatGPT that the Harpers asked the party to go to the artifact's resting place. When they get there, they see an archaeology group that somehow stumbles into the entrance. The party follows the group into the dungeon and they are trapped inside. I also said that the archaeologists will try to act clueless and ask the party for help. But if they're detected as Zentarim, then they would try to sway the party to join them instead. Then I asked ChatGPT to run it and tell me what happens. This is what it came up with. The party becomes suspicious of the archaeologists through an insight check. They notice that the archaeologists have a keen interest in the sections of the dungeon with stronger magical defenses. Then, they notice one of the archaeologists accidentally revealing their flying snake tattoo. The Zentarim come clean and try to sway them to join forces. They continue working together because they need to find a way out. When they reach the central chamber, they see the artifact, which is a crystalline orb pulsating with arcane energy. The chamber's defenses activate, and the party works together with the Zentarim just to survive. The Zentarim leader, Zara Thorn, tries to get the artifact in the final moments of the fight, but the party beats her to it. The chamber begins to collapse as the artifact is removed, and the party and the Zentarim escape. Zara and her troop leave to plot how to recover the artifacts from them in the future. As for the campaign outcomes, I noted down the following. The party acquired the artifact. The Zentarim tried to sway them, but they decided to stay loyal to the Harpers. I would note also that the Zentarim don't actually know them to be working for the Harpers. And though they have the artifact, the Zentarim also now know that the artifact is no longer in a well-defended dungeon, but in the hands of a group of adventurers. Again, we go back to step 1. Logically, we're still following the Harper thread, but circumstances have now drastically changed for them. The artifact is now out in the open, and therefore I thought the Harper agent would talk to the party about destroying the artifact. This replaces their epic. The first step to achieving this is, as the Harpers, we want to find an expert who can tell us how to destroy the artifact, so that we can prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. If I look at our backward plan, we can see that we've already completed the first two. So I now have to work on incorporating the other yet unseen factions into the story. How can I do that? I thought the Harpers would definitely know that the Open Lord Laeral Silverhand and the Blackstaff are high-level magic practitioners who could potentially know how to deal with artifacts like these. I also would now tell Matt the Mercenary that he remembers someone from the Voices who was always fascinated by the Netherese and arcane artifacts and could be an alternative if the party can get their hands on them. I then asked ChatGPT to choose which path to take. It chose to pursue the Voices path. At the end of that session, the party infiltrated the Voices base where they found Kara. Matt and Kara have a history that Matt uses to convince her to help them. She agrees only if they promise to secure her safe passage away from the Voices. Back to step 1. At this point, I felt like the party still hasn't really made contact with the Voices, so I decided to continue playing with them. How do I get them on the board if the party was able to infiltrate their base presently unseen? As the backstory for the scenario, I then decided that a Zentrum envoy went to the Voices to secure their Netherese experts' knowledge. The Zentrum is also a shady organization, one that is much bigger than the Voices is now. So why wouldn't they know about the expert? They definitely know that they are dealing with a Netherese artifact, given that Zara Thorn and her troop narrowly escaped a collapsing Netherese dungeon. They propose a partnership. The Zents know who has the artifact, and the Voices know how to use it. So the leader of the Voices called for Kara to be brought to them only a few moments after she leaves with the party. Now they send out a search party, and they have two objectives. As the Voices, we want to recover Kara so we can use her knowledge to control the artifact if we ever acquire it. And as the Voices, we want to kill Kara if we cannot retrieve her so that nobody else can use her knowledge and so we can make an example out of her. So what happened after running the session? The party is pursued by Jax, the Shadow Thorn. It seems ChatGPT really likes the name Thorn. Also, it has a fixation on shade and shadow. Anyway, the party is nearly overcome, and Kara almost surrenders to buy the party their lives. However, a daring move by Mulligan blows up one of the tunnels under Waterdeep, which helps the party escape. Matt and Jax have a final climactic duel. Matt defeats Jax but lets him live, and Kara now swears to help the party destroy the artifact. Let's check the backward plan again. We still don't have the Lord's Alliance on the board. This makes me choose them as the next faction to develop. But they're too disconnected. How would they even know about the artifact at this point? I decided that Lady Seraphina would talk to the Open Lord to appeal to their right as the nobility to control such artifacts. This made me pull in Kat's parents into the picture as well. Let's set up the board once more. Why would Lady Seraphina want to act now? Well, if she knows that the party almost lost the artifact as well as the Netherese expert all at once, I say that's reason enough. But how could she know that? I thought then that during the very first encounter at the auction, Lady Seraphina's bodyguard was able to slip a small bead into Kat's pack. The bead allows Lady Seraphina to scry on her daughter. Now she has the basis to go to Laeral Silverhand to ask for help. But why would Laeral take it seriously? Well, the party did just blow up a tunnel underneath Waterdeep. This is too much of a coincidence to ignore. So now both the Open Lord and Lady Seraphina have the same objective. They want to convince the party to leave the artifact in their care so that they don't destroy it. But although their immediate goals are the same, their overall objectives are actually quite different. It's also at this point that I thought precisely about what the artifact was, who the tyrant was, and why Lady Seraphina needs Cat. Off the top of my head, I could only remember one Netherese person, Karsus. So I thought maybe the artifact is Karsus's pride. He literally locked away his pride in his orb before he tried to usurp Mystra to be a god of magic, because he thought pride would be a distraction. So this distilled ball of pride has been hungering for millennia. Someone who assimilates it would get Karsus's knowledge, but also this pent-up emotion. Lady Seraphina requires Kat to be a vessel because she's actually the culmination of thousands of years of effort to reconstitute as much of Karsus' DNA into one person, Bene Gesserit style. Of course, she keeps this information to herself. I never had to think of this information before. It was fine to leave the MacGuffin as a nondescript important object up until this point. When running the session, the party is invited to a meeting with Laeral and Seraphina by a mediator. The party agrees, but only in a location of their choosing, so that they have better control of the situation. Laeral and Seraphina arrive with a small unarmed escort. They try to convince the party that there's immense potential in using the artifact for good, so it shouldn't be destroyed. The party provisionally agrees to it, As long as Cat gets a say about how the power is to be used, and as long as the power is never used for conquest. However, the party wants to learn more information before really committing. They will work with Kara to get more information. We're so close to the end now. All of the factions are on board. According to our backward plan, we just need to make the party choose which faction to ally with. At this point, I transition from having a faction-driven user story to a party-driven one. They're the ones who are driving the action this time. As the party, we want to find out more about the artifact so that we can decide for ourselves which faction to support. My job now is to make this make sense once again. How will they have the time? Why don't they just do the ritual right away when Lady Seraphina and the Open Lord are with them? So, as the backstory, I said that Lady Seraphina has to leave them for a bit to retrieve the instruction manuals for the ritual. This gives the party time to research with Kara. Since this is a very pivotal moment in the campaign, I won't hide the information behind roles that could fail. I want the party to make a very difficult but informed choice. So after running the session, the party finds out these things. The ritual proposed by Seraphina will make Kat the vessel of Karsa's pride. She will still be Kat with all of her memories and feelings, but she will also be infused with Karsa's knowledge, emotions, and personality traits. There's no way to tell how much of her will be Kat and how much will be Karsa's. If they want to destroy the artifact, they will need either Kara or Kat to sacrifice themselves. If Kara performs the ritual alone, the artifact will definitely be destroyed, but she will die. She is willing. If Kat performs the ritual with Kara, she has a choice until the last moment to either become the vessel or destroy the artifact and die. This is not just a very difficult narrative choice, but tactically as well. If Kara performs the ritual alone, she will surely die, but Kat will be fully available to defend her in the process. If Kat wants to take part, she may be hindered in the battle. I asked ChatGPT to tell me what the party wants to do. Do they side with the Lord's Alliance and Seraphina? Do they do the ritual preemptively with Kara instead? And if so, do they intend to destroy the artifact, or do they want to try to control Karsus instead? The answer came. Kat chose to perform the ritual preemptively, and she resolves to destroy the artifact. With this, we have arrived at our ultimate scene. As the party, we want to perform the ritual while defending Kara and Kat, so that we can destroy it and prevent its magic from being abused by anyone. Given their resolve to destroy the artifact, they can ask the Harpers for help. The combined forces of the Zentarim and the Voices could storm them and try to stop the ritual. The Lord's Alliance would also arrive, so the different factions would keep each other busy as much as they would try to attack the party. Midway through the ritual, Lady Seraphina could arrive and try to assimilate Karsus herself, seeing as Kat is trying to destroy the artifact. Whatever happens in the end is up to the dice and the party. Whew, that was a long one, but I still have a few things I want to highlight. First, I hope this example demonstrated the concept of adaptive or rolling wave planning. The story was guided by our backward plan and faction epics, but I did not plan everything right at the start. In fact, I only planned and created the things when I needed to. Take for example this part, where the party chooses to either get help from the Open Lord and the Blackstaff, or to extract Kara from the Voices. If the party chose to team up with the Lord's Alliance, it would have all been fine. I would have created epics for the Lord's Alliance instead, and then figured out how to get the Voices on board through other means. I hope I also was able to demonstrate that by setting up the backstory for each scenario, you as the DM can make almost anything make sense without disregarding the agency of your players. This is also the way you can make it appear like you've planned things all along when in fact you haven't. Take for example the detail about Lady Seraphina's bead hidden in Kat's pack. I only thought of that when I needed it, But it also quite nicely explains why she let the party go without a fight during the auction adventure. She knew she could keep tabs on them reliably. If any of the players were thinking that this was a plot hole, then it would suddenly be plugged, and it would appear like it was something I had planned since the very beginning. The last thing I want to emphasize is the importance of taking down notes and visualizing. At least for me, having a document like this makes it easier to keep a high level overview of what's happening in the campaign, and it helps me come up with the next logical step after each session. In the best of times, you're not chasing after the story. It can feel like it's coming on its own to you. So, Bebby, I hope you found this workflow useful and you can implement it for your own campaign. No pressure though, take your time. I've just missed playing your game. As for the rest of you folks, you don't have the luxury of living with me, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Did this heckin' long over-explained video help you out? Would you like me to do a dramatic reading of the final story in a separate video? Be sure to let me know. YouTube has been stiffing me with impressions recently, so it would mean a lot if you like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. Hope you can share it with your friends too, especially struggling DMs. I'd appreciate it as it would really help the channel grow. Hey, I'm Jarek, a dungeon master with a hobby in agile project management. Until next time, my fellow adventurers in agility, bye. Okay, as the Harpers, I want to protect the artifact. Oh, the Filipino is trying to come out. We want to protect the artifact, not protect the artifact.